So I am Jessica Hoffman at the Greensboro Science Center in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I am the Vice President of Animal Care and Welfare.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all. So this is a really exciting episode. We are headed back yet again to the Greensboro Science Center. We're going to be visiting there a couple times over the next few weeks, although we also will have some other interviews dropped in between those. And, you know, on my last trip down to North Carolina, when I went down to the Greensboro Science Center, Becca, who I'm sure you all know as the, digital marketing person who coordinates all of this for us and has been a many times over guest on the podcast, really pushed to get us some different interviews. So every one of the people that we talk to are in just very different places at the Science Center. And honestly, they're all like different parts of the zoo that you've never heard of before. And that's pretty cool. So we're going to be talking to Jessica, who just explained her title a moment ago here. And then we're going to be getting into some life support systems work over the aquarium and the zoo. And there's a person who is a beekeeper at the Greensboro Science Center. And we're going to be bringing you that interview. And then another keeper chat with a very special, very cool, fairly viral person at the center. So I'm excited for literally all of those interviews. But as far as my guest today, well, Jessica is not just all of the stuff that she mentioned, but she's also an artist. And she's actually illustrated a book called Is There a Bear Over There? That is helping out the Safe Andean Bear program right now. So we're going to talk about that more in the interview, and I'll remind you about it afterwards. But I'll be sure to include a link to the Amazon page for that book so that you can go and buy it and support Safe Andean Bear, which is awesome. We're going to talk about all kinds of cool animal stuff and her career, just all the things. It's a good interview, y'all. Y'all are going to enjoy it. But before we get to that, quick reminder, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any interview episodes or Zoo News episodes, which come out on every Friday. And also don't forget to follow along at Rossifari on the, Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. And if you'd like to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. And that's about all of that. So without further ado, here is my interview with Jessica Hoffman of the Greensboro Science Center. Ooh, that's a fancy title.
It's a long title.
I like it. Very cool. So you are, I guess, the most important person that I've spoken to here so far.
Ooh.
So yeah, very, very fancy.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Other than Becca, obviously,
yes.
who, Awesome. So we'll get to everything that you do here, but I'd like to start off talking about your life and what got you into all of this. So when you were, knee high to a grasshopper, were you into animals? Did you always know this was something you wanted to do? Tell me about that.
So I'm a farm kid. Okay. So I like to say I was born into animals. So I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, which is as farm kid as you get. But kind of when I hit high school, age, I hated it. And I was like, this is the last thing I want to do. I'm sick of being dirty and smelly, and I want to, I want to do my hair and wear makeup and not be around animals that stink and blah, 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 so I was like, not for me. But I still always had a strong love for just biology and wildlife and the outdoors. And so that was always still a big draw for me. And then I also had a strong art interest. And so kind of when I started hitting where you start thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up in college. I was torn between art and science still, but those were still two very strong draws. By that point, I had become the dolphin fanatic, sort of that typical, like, I love dolphins, I want to be a marine biologist and, save the ocean. And so, very idealistic with that. I ended up for college deciding on a program at UW Stevens Point in Wisconsin that had it was a biology track, but they also had a captive wildlife minor, and they had an emphasis in zoo and aquaria, and they had this really cool, like, aquarium, like, marine biology, course with it. And so I was like, yeah, like, that's it. Did all of that schooling. Unfortunately, by the time I actually got in, they had cut the ocean piece of it and that marine biology piece. But I was like, well, it was still really cool. And then I started doing all of the zoo stuff and like the internships and things like that, and really just fell in love with that. Graduated, took my first job in Texas at Fossil Rim Wildlife Center.
Nice. I love Fossil Rim. Yes. They're a friend of the podcast, and we love them. Yeah.
I will say, admittedly, I took that job thinking, well, Texas is a coastal state. Like, I still had this, like, I'm going to get into the ocean world. And I was like, there's a sea world in Texas. Mm-hmm. It's a coastal state. Like, I'm just going to get to Texas, even though Fossil Rim was inland, no ocean stuff there. But I was like, that's going to be my gateway,
right,
kind of thing. Well, as these things happen, like, fell in love with everything that was at Fossil Rim and was like, I love all these terrestrial animals and I love everything. And, and then honestly, I've never worked a marine mammal in my life. I just fell in love with all these other things once I got exposed to it. And several years later, my dad came to visit me, and, we were, at Fossil Rim, and I was talking about, like, here's what I do and here's what I work on. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, you know that you're just a farmer with exotics, right? And I was like, yeah, so I am. And so it was always meant to be, I think.
That's really funny. That's especially true at Fossil Rim, where it's so much, open air and so much hoof stock and everything.
Yes, yeah. So, yep. And now I love to be dirty. I love to be smelly. I'm like, nothing phases me. I love it. And I love the hard work of it. So
nice. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. So after Fossil Rim, where did you end up?
So I was at Fossil Rim for several years. And then I had always still had like a strong desire, interest to do kind of wildlife conservation. I just never kind of fell into that route either. And I had debated on going back to grad school. I finally made that decision. This is kind of when some of those distance programs started developing, because I was always like, well, I don't want to leave my work. I love my work.
Right.
Texas A&M came out with a distance program that was a master's in wildlife. And so I started doing that while I was at Fossil Rim. And then I did eventually finish my last year at Texas A&M just for logistics and things like that. But I did that and then decided, okay, I'm going to be a wildlife biologist. And after I graduated, took a job at a facility in California that worked with a wild population and hated it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. After I was there a couple of weeks and I was like, okay, I'll do this for a year and then figure out something else. And then I was there a month and I was like, okay, I'll do 6 months and then I'll figure out something else. And then by I was 6 weeks in and I was like, I need to get out. And I happened to already be in California at that time and started being like, well, what can I do? And San Diego had a job opening and I was like, well, it's what I'm qualified for. I love it. And so ended up going back to the zoo world and then stayed there ever since.
Nice. And what did you do at San Diego? We love San Diego.
Yeah. I got to be one of the coolest positions possible there when they had giant pandas. I was one of the giant panda keepers.
Nice.
As well as there was other animals besides the pandas in that area. And so I did that area predominantly for most of my time there. I did work in a few other areas for a shorter amount of time, but the giant pandas were definitely the highlight of my time there.
That's really exciting. Are you excited that they're coming back?
I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
I always thought they were just they're an amazing animal to see, but they're even more amazing to work with and get to know. So I'm excited for the staff there that's going to get to work with those bears again.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I have gotten, to meet lots and lots of animals in my time doing this podcast, but giant pandas have eluded me so far, and I need them to stop eluding me. So I'm hoping with my connections at San Diego and the Smithsonian's National Zoo and stuff that maybe this next batch will get me there, because they just seem like incredible
They
bears.
are. I mean, like everything, there's vastly different personalities, but I got lucky. I got to work with, there was one really, really cool bear in particular. He was one of the, he was like a cub from a couple of years before when I had started, but his name was Mei Sheng. And he was just the coolest, chillest, like happy, go lucky, like if Baloo from the Jungle Book was a panda, like that, like he just had that, and he was goofy and fun. Like he was just amazing. So in particular, and then there was his dad was like this sweet, old man bear that was just, he was just cool. I mean, like just great personalities, and yeah, I really enjoyed him.
That's awesome. Very cool. And so now you are at Greensboro.
I am.
And which is good, because otherwise this would be hard to do this interview. Since I'm here right now. Yeah. So tell me about like what brought you to Greensboro and what your first job was here, stuff like that.
So I was actually from San Diego. I went to Northwest Trek in Washington State, and I was working there for several years. And by that time, I was with who is now my husband, but wasn't yet at the time. But we were both working, and we're both in the zoo field. And we had been there for several years. But to be perfectly honest, the weather was really getting to us. We loved working at Northwest Trek, absolutely loved it there. But he had come from Albuquerque, so sun. And then we had moved there from San Diego, so lots more sun. We work outside for our work, so just the damp and the cold and the constant sort of spit rain, like it got to both of us pretty bad. That after about 6 years, we were like, we need to try something else. Like you can only drink so much coffee, and and so it was more that we just couldn't hack it. So we both started looking at other facilities. Being in the same career together, that's always tricky, because it's, you're lucky to get one job, let alone two or multiple facilities in an area. So we just started searching and throwing our application out for places that had multiple. Here, the Science Center had a couple positions posted, as well as the Asheboro Zoo, or the North Carolina Zoo in Asheboro.
Yes, we love the North Carolina Zoo.
Yeah. So long story short, I ended up getting here, and then he ended up getting into the North Carolina Zoo.
Nice.
So he's working there. So,
Very cool. That's exciting. Yeah. So is there a lot of competition between you two when you get home? Is it like, Greensboro is better? No, North Carolina is better.
A little bit of healthy, like, what'd you do today? Well, this is what I did today. Well, well, I have, a baby due. Well, I have a baby due. It's like,
well, you have Magic Mike here, so y'all are going to have a lot of babies due here, because we all know that Mike is the magic touch for whatever reason. Yes, I know. 2 of the new stingrays were born here. I don't know if that picked you up or not, so I'll just say it and repeat it. Yay! Yeah, that's very exciting. That's very cool. I like that there. One of the things I love about the East Coast is that there are enough facilities where you can do what you're talking about in a lot of places. Yeah. Like your facilities are 40 miles apart from each other. And, when I was living in the Philly area, there was the Philadelphia Zoo, Elmwood Park Zoo, Adventure Aquarium, and Brandywine Zoo, all within 40 minutes of each other. Yeah. And it really does open things up, as opposed to, some of the places further west where it's like, there's a zoo in the state. So,
And that's how we ended up getting into the Seattle area in the first place. Is there was Northwest Trek, Woodland Park, Point Defiance, Seattle Aquarium. Yeah. So that, when we were looking to leave San Diego, it was the same kind of thing of like, where are there multiple options that we have a chance?
Right. Very cool. So let's talk about where you're currently at with your career, though. So what is this lengthy title, and what does it actually mean?
So it's on par with if you've heard the title, like a general curator. So it's on par with that, though we're kind of phasing out the general curator title because it's a bit of a dated, antiquated kind of a title. And if you go outside of our industry and you tell somebody I'm a general curator, they either think you work in a museum or, they sort of look at you funny. And so we just felt here that just wasn't reflective of really what we do today. And so kind of had a title switch a couple of years ago, but the same work. So essentially my work is I've kind of moved up from, the keeper to being like an area lead or supervisor to, I actually came to the Science Center for the bird and mammal curator position.
Okay.
And so there was, multiple curators, each with kind of their specialty or their discipline. So there was, reptiles and inverts, aquatics, and then birds and mammals. But then there wasn't sort of a central kind of leadership still over all of the animal departments. It reported up to, kind of the COO from there. And so as we started getting bigger and growing, the Science Center kind of realized that, there needed to kind of be leadership over all those departments because we were all kind of doing our own different thing, which doesn't really work.
Right.
And so that's where my position got developed, and then I got it. So I was very thankful of that, and have really enjoyed kind of syncing everything so that we're all kind of on the same page with, it's the animal department's training and enrichment programs, not this department and this department and this department, and like, just how, we manage staff and just have protocols and kind of be a collective bigger, like we're all in this together. We have a lot of multiple exhibits. So it's like we have exhibits that have reptiles, mammals, fish in it, so, like why would we be these silos, when we're all together?
Sure.
And certainly with the biodome, that's going to be the biggest thing coming where that's everything in one mix of a giant exhibit. So, we were moving that direction no matter what.
Right. No, I think that's great. I think with mixed species exhibits becoming more prevalent, and I think I'm even amazed when I talk to different facilities. There are times that I'll go and do like I'm here today doing multiple interviews, and I will go to a place and I will do an interview with somebody. And then in my next interview, the person will say, oh, and we're thinking about trying this, but we don't know what to do or something. And I have actually had moments where I'm like, I just spoke to X from this team who told me they're doing that. And there was no knowledge of that. And I've actually helped connect those people. And I'm like, part of me gets it because when you work, it's all very, you're very focused on what you're doing. But part of me is like, holy cow, why is outside podcast guy now explaining to you that this is something that you want to do and this team's doing and you could combine your resources and all that stuff. So I think that is a very necessary role. I think that's very cool that you get to do that.
Yeah. And I get to, really help facilitate the coordination of that. But then I also get to help facilitate, like new exhibit design,
Nice.
What we bring in, so kind of being. The downside is, I don't get a lot of the hands-on animal experience anymore. So that's what I had to, give up and walk away from. But I can be at that table to be a change maker, to be a thinker. I like to be creative. I like to develop and change and do new and, what's the guest experience? What, I like to look at the bigger picture kinds of things. So now I get to do that.
That's very cool. Yeah. As I went up the ranks as a performer, and started music directing and company managing and writing my own shows and producing my own shows and all that stuff, I became shocked at how much time I spent at a computer and how much time I don't spend with drumsticks in my hand.
Yeah. That is the sad.
There are entire weeks where I don't even remember to play, but I work a lot. I'm like, oh, this is unfortunate. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I just told Megan yesterday, I went down to look at something in the servo block house. That was actually the first time I actually saw our kittens with my own eyes. I'd seen pictures, I'd seen video, I can watch them on camera, but I hadn't laid my own eyes on them. And I was
That's
like, oh,
amazing.
like
Yeah, I know. I need
geeked
to
out for
see
a
these
second.
little kitties.
I know. And I'm like, I need to get out of my office.
It's time for interrupting John.
Woo, it's been a long time since we've had an interrupting John, but I did need to break in here for a second because so what happened here was we actually had to pause the interview for a second because of stuff going on outside of the interview world. And as we were waiting to get back on track, Becca and I started talking about microphones and microphones being on and all that stuff. And it led to such an interesting story from Jessica that I wanted to leave that story in here. So here is that story, and then we'll get back into the rest of the interview. But it really wouldn't have made sense like outside of that context. So enjoy.
One of the first times I ever did like a TV spot, it was for like an animal show, and it was at Fossil Rim.
Yes.
And, so I'd never done it before, and I was green and I was mic'd up, and so they're just explaining to me, and they're like, okay, you're going to be looking at, like, you're going to be looking over here. And they're like, try to not look at the cameraman, Todd, and they kind of joked, and they're like, we know Todd's cute, and, it's hard not to look at him. And so I looked at Todd and I was like, they had that all. They put it in the show.
Oh, that's amazing.
So and I was like, so when I saw it, I was like, why would you do that to me? But that was my lesson learned of like, all right, they will use anything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So you mentioned that you don't get a lot of animal time right now, which breaks my little heart.
Mine too.
I actually had the same thought today. We're doing so many interviews today that I was like, will I go to the zoo? I hope I get to go to the zoo. But what? Like, how bad is it? And when I say bad, I don't mean bad. I know you're doing important stuff. But, like, do you get any animal time? When's the last time you got to be hands-on? Yes. Okay.
So that's, I guess, the perk card, to be the boss is, like, I can leave my office at any time and go walk around and see things. And, and I do try to get out just, it's always good to have eyes out on everything and just look at stuff. So I certainly get to do a lot of just that. I try to be careful now because now I'm like that boss that's annoying. I think where it's like, if I do try to be like, I can help you guys catch this. And I'm so rusty at stuff that it's like, I'm just going to create more hassle than it's worth if I try to do that. But sometimes I do try if there's an interesting procedure going on or something along those lines. I do try to at least get out and watch that and see what's happening. I do, one of the things I do actually still do on occasion are transports, just because those are staff intensive, they're long, and so they're not very exciting because you're, looking at a box or a crate, for hours on end, but, it's still, like, I have the flexibility of like, what, I want to go, fix something over in this area today. I can walk away from my computer. Now I'm going to back up, all kinds of other work to do so, but sometimes you need those. To me, those are my mental health days.
Right, exactly.
I just need to walk away from this and I need to like go clean up stuff or, fix something, So I actually love doing that. I would do that more if I could,
right.
But I got to balance that out with all of so much computer work. And I do have actually a lot of animals at home. So I certainly go home and then I, feed that need at home.
Nice. That's good. But let's talk about some of the animals here. I want to know which some of your favorites are. And we have a rule on this podcast. You're not allowed to say you don't have favorites. Because we know you do. It's a lie. It can be multiple favorites. I never really learned what the word favorite means. People say it's like your top one thing. To me, it's like many things. But come on. What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, I have my favorite animal in the world planet, but not necessarily the ones here.
Okay.
So that's where I love donkeys more than life itself.
Okay.
Now, our two donkeys here are a little bit standoffish, a little bit snobbish. They don't want to, they don't want to let me into their inner circle.
Are you trying to say that you have some stubborn asses here?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I definitely have some stubborn asses. And I really tried to be their best friend when I first started here, and I gave up. But I do love donkeys. I've always loved the small cats. I love the small angry things that try to be fierce, try to kill you, even though you know they can't. But, you know, like, so fishing cats, I've always loved the fishing cats.
Becca.
I love, yes, Becca also, very ferocious. I love our pygmy hippos.
Of course. They're
them.
amazing.
I love the okapi. I've always been a fan of okapi. But then I like weird, interesting things too. Like, I love our moray eel.
Oh,
like,
nice.
I remember when we first opened the aquarium and we got our first moray eels in, and I loved the look of them. I loved how they moved. I love, like, when you actually see them swimming in the water. I love their color. I love that color green. So I like interesting things like that. I like creepy things. I like or like just the underappreciated things. So I even like, you know, some of our we had some interesting insects. We've kind of phased them out, but I love our tarantulas. This is why I didn't end up at the ocean, because I fell in love with everything. So.
That's actually really fair. Okay, that's cool. You know, you mentioned that you were here for the opening of the aquarium. And unless things go horribly wrong, you're also going to be here for the opening of the biodome.
I hope so. Yes.
And obviously Revolution Ridge was in between the two and stuff. What has it been like seeing this facility? I can't even call it grow, like pop off. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. That's what it's been like, insanity. Honestly, so I'll have been here, it'll be 13 years this July, and I don't know where my time went because it has flown, you know, and I think about how many things we've accomplished and how many things we have built and changed and grown and redeveloped, and it's unreal. Like, because most places don't move at that speed. And the fact that we've been able to do it and have done it well, and, you know, like, have put out some really nice, you know, like, just offerings for our guests, some beautiful exhibits, some, you know, like, brought so many amazing new species of animals for our community to see. I've loved every part of the process. Like, is there blood, sweat, tears, and crying during it? Yes. But I thrive on that, I guess. For me, I thrive on chaos. I thrive on change. I thrive on energy. I thrive on, you know, so that's why I think the Science Center was so perfect for me, is I love just, like, give me a crazy day every day.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Let's see where it goes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, you mentioned something so I've done a lot of interviews here, you know, and it's always focused on the zoo or aquarium side of things. But you're up high enough that I'm guessing that, like, you actually interact with the fact that this is a science center, that there are people who come here because they want to see dinosaur stuff or a planetarium and don't even know that there are red pandas and binturongs running around here, which is the saddest thing if they don't know that. But anyway, and so I'm just curious if you could talk at all to, I guess, what it's like being a zoo and an aquarium in an accredited facility, but where that's actually only a part of what's going on here, you know?
That was one of the pieces that really attracted me to the Science Center when I saw the job posting, because I've still always carried that complete love of total science. I have been a space nerd. Like, I worked at space camp in California, and I went to space camp in Alabama when I was a kid.
Nice.
I dabbled in being I was like, maybe I want to be an astronaut for a while. You know, so I've loved that. I love geology. I'm a rock nerd. I love dinosaurs because they're still animals, and, you know, and they're reptiles, and I love reptiles. And so when I saw this posting originally, I was like, wait, I get zoo and aquarium stuff and all of this really cool science, you know, like, on top of it. I mean, to me, it was the perfect storm of everything. And I think that's what makes us so awesome, is we really have all of these different offerings, and it's such a great value for all those different interests. Because typically, if you like animals, you tend to still like a lot of the other science as well. Mm-hmm. So it meets all those needs.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's something I've always found interesting when I come here. Like, I've gotten to know a lot of people here, and I'll see staff members and I'll like go to wave and realize I don't know them, and then I'll realize that it's literally because they are just like another department, have nothing to do with animals, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing here. Normally, when you go to a zoo, it's all animal people. Feel like even the people that don't work directly with the animals are kind of like really into the animals. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And here, like, they're I'm sure everyone loves the animals, but I'm sure there are people who come here 5 days a week for work and go to whatever part of the facility they're at and don't go out into the zoo because that's not what they're here to do, And that is very fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's nice is, like, let's take our finance department, that their finance, like that's what they do. But I think what's appealing for here is you can do finance anywhere. You can be in a big corporate building, probably make more money, but like being on our finance team here, like they can, that whole mental health of like, they can take a break. And, that's what's awesome is we see our team all the time. Like, they can go take a half-hour walk in the zoo and just have that, like, I get to go walk and look at animals and then go back to my computer and do all my finance numbers, kind of thing. So I think that is what's appealing is, they might not have been animal people or that's not, what draw, but I mean, what a great perk to have that. Like, wow, that's awesome. Or like, go watch some butterflies for a while if you just, crunching numbers was getting to you. So
no, yeah, something that I talk about a lot is the reason that I made this podcast in part is because on tour can be very, very stressful. And it became my thing that whenever I would get to a place with a zoo, I would go there for my own mental health. Like it was before, I had any idea of doing this. It was just for my own brain. And the ability to walk out your office and go and see, some stubborn donkeys or whatever is pretty cool, you know? Yeah. That's awesome. So let's talk about the next big thing that's coming. Because y'all have been making some announcements about the biodome. The biodome. And I was just looking at it and not the actual thing, but the model. The model. At first, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this looks very small. But then Becca explained that it was a model. Yeah. So that helped.
It's going to be a little bit bigger than that.
I was like, I don't think you can fit more than like one guest in here at a time and they have to lay down. But so tell me about what's gone into this and how excited you are and just like your perspective of the biodome.
Oh, so I mean, for us, it's already been, a work in progress for the last couple of years. And so, it's kind of been that hurry up and wait thing of like, let's get there already. So super excited that we're finally getting to like where we're going to start demoing things and start moving dirt and it's out and we've got, the model and the real design. But where this kind of came from is, we're always looking at, okay, what's our next thing? So after Revolution Ridge, it was like, well, what is our next thing? And with Revolution Ridge, we actually hit what is, the perimeter of our property for the Science Center. So at that point, it's reinventing, interior spaces. And so we kind of had that area where what we call the Discovery House building and kind of just some back of house support areas. And then we had our dancing fountains, which were really kind of aging out and just being maintenance wise difficult to keep going.
I mean, dancers always struggle when they get older. It's a thing.
Do. Yeah. They get tired, get sore. And so, that kind of became the site focus of, we could build something cool. But again, we're always looking at, and this is where Glenn, our director, is like, what's different, what's unique, what's not anywhere else. And having sort of this epic indoor rainforest concept, it's been done. So that in and of itself is obviously not new, but it was certainly new for Greensboro. And, for the Science Center, this was just a whole different foray. We're using some new technology for the roofing or, some new structure that's called foil tech. That's like a soft material that, allows all the UV penetration with like an air layer that keeps it all, like the whole thermodynamics appropriate. Teflon. It's Teflon.
Okay. It's Teflon.
It's still called foil tech.
Why are you interrupting, Becca? Go away. Go away. Go back to your editing photos.
Okay. So we use this Teflon foil tech product.
Now that I'm leaving in.
But then, so aside from just the structure itself and the building, which is a very different, big build, then we have multiple new animal exhibits inside this space. And we're going to represent, aquatic exhibits, terrestrial, bird, mammal, reptile exhibits. So it's going to be, again, that all-encompassing mixed species. Some are going to be self-contained because we can't just have a free-for-all of everything,
right.
living together. So some of it is going to be contained exhibits, but then there is going to be just free-flight birds. We're going to have our open water systems for our freshwater rays. We're going to have our sloth is going to be just moving throughout the trees and the vines, in different spaces, and guests will be able to walk through all of that. And it's just going to be more of a complete immersion experience that is not something we've done here before. And then in addition to the biodome, another piece that we really needed here was more support for our aquarium initiatives. And by support, I mean everything from just more housing, more quarantine spaces, but then also there's a couple of important conservation programs for us that we wanted to be more involved in. So the Florida Reef Track program and some of the AZA larval fish program to support more sustainability for a lot of the species that we exhibit. And so we really wanted to be involved in that, but we were just really limited on space. And so we're also going to be building what we're calling the ARC, that is adjacent to the biodome. That's going to be our Aquatic Research and Conservation Center, is what that stands for. Okay. And that'll be a space that it's going to be more like a behind-the-scenes look of what happens in the aquarium, but that guests will be able to walk through and see and watch aquarists working right there on tanks. We do, on occasion, get asked to hold some sea turtles for, if there's a cold stun event. So that would be also a place where we would showcase some of those if we do get them in.
I love sea turtles.
I know.
So much.
So it's just so those two pieces combined is kind of this, this epic, tropical forest, and then, this really cool science happening.
Right.
So I'm really excited for all of that to finally start happening.
I bet. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to see that build up and take off, and that's very cool. I do have one question that's completely unrelated to anything, but since you guys have red pandas and binturongs, and sometimes we'll hold sea turtles once this is all up and running. And you may have noticed from the back of my computer that I have 4 favorite species.
Yep.
And you're nailing, we'll call it 2.5 of them, but really 3 of them.
Oh, the tree kangaroo.
How do I convince you to get Matchie's tree kangaroos here? I will beg if that is what it takes. They're an amazing species.
To tell the truth, we actually did consider them several years ago. I did have a space. It's actually what ended up being where our kookaburra lapwing exhibit is. And that space, after we had shut it down from being wallaby, I did actually look long and hard on, could we do tree kangaroo there and what would it take? And I can't remember why we ended up not going forward with it, but there was where it just wasn't going to quite work, but they have always still been in the back of my brain.
I mean, I'm just putting this out there. So, my Instagram, I have followers at all the things, but red pandas are the thing. I am a red panda. I'm a Fanda account. People follow me for my red panda content. Becca and I had Miso going viral so many times. It's craziness, the collabs that we've done and stuff. But lately, when I've posted tree kangaroo stuff, it has actually gotten more attention than the red panda stuff. And on top of that, Roger Williams Park Zoo, where I have some great relationships, their tree kangaroo content has all started going viral recently.
Oh.
Big time viral.
Oh.
And I genuinely think, like, I love the animal and I'm always pitching, this kind of thing. But I genuinely think as y'all are planning for the future here, I think tree kangaroos are going to be the next thing. Like, how even just a couple years ago, red pandas were fine, but now they're like popular, and then turning red happened. All these things happened, and they're like, everyone knows what a red panda is. I think tree kangaroos are next. I really do, just from the numbers that I'm seeing with them.
So I think Becca has a marketing budget that, if this is like a social media sensation, I feel like she could put in her budget a tree kangaroo exhibit.
Make it happen. Just,
let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Since we have red panda and binturong as some top faves. So last year we had babies of both that both needed to be hand raised for different reasons. And so we had binturong team and we had red panda team. Which team would you have been?
So as a person who was privileged enough to come down and document the hand rearing and share interviews and spend time with them, and who may or may not have tweaked the results by getting his fans to vote so that Bianca and Monty got those names, just maybe, just saying, I have to tell you, well, first of all, it's a hard question because I love both species. Second of all, though, I really developed a really amazing relationship with Bianca and Monty and with Zuko, Azula, and Miso. But honestly, the thing that stands out the most to me from all of that was my time with the binturongs. I love red pandas, and a lot of my fans right now that are listening are going, wait, what? But baby binturongs, it was so special. Yeah. It was so cool. And Becca was even saying there were times that we spent time with them where I was able to get photos of them that she hadn't been able to get, like they weren't slowing down. And we got them, I played with them enough where they got to slow down and we got some good photos and stuff. And it just meant so much to me. And like, so did the panda stuff. Like one is a 9.999 and one is a 10. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the binturong situation here. And I got to tell you, I mean, literally no exaggeration, some of the best days of my entire life were coming down here and spending time with those 5 animals because...
I mean, that doesn't happen.
No, I was in shock. And actually, the funny thing is, so last year, Roger Williams Park Zoo had a tree kangaroo joey.
Oh.
Paya. And I got to go up there and spend time with her on multiple occasions and got to build a relationship with her. And so there was this one year where 3 of my 4 favorite species, and I've seen baby sea turtles, but like they're sea turtles. I love them to death, but they're not as interactive and and they all had babies at facilities that I had these relationships with, and I got to interact with them and meet them and do interviews about them. And I don't know that I will ever top last year for me personally. I don't know how I could. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was insane. And the fact that Greensboro was such a big part of it has been very special to me. Like very special. Yeah.
I was just curious. I was personally team bint myself. I like red pandas are absolutely adorable. I love them. But for me too, there was the bintlets. There was something, again, they fit in my more like they're weird and different and people don't know what they are, and they're so stinking cute. And
so cute.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah. So I did love the bintlets.
Yeah.
I loved everything.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm always fascinated too by just what it is. Why are we drawn to certain animals? Why do I love binturongs and tree kangaroos and red pandas and sea turtles? And like, when you were like our 2 donkeys here, it's like, they have donkeys here. I've been to the barn a million times and I don't think I like process that. But for you, it's like the cutest and coolest thing. And like, I don't know why that is what it is, but it is. And it's really special.
And mine, like donkeys, I didn't have that as a kid.
Right.
I mean, I grew up on a farm where you would think it would maybe develop and never did. It came in adulthood somewhere. It came while I was at Fossil Rim.
Interesting.
And I think my gateway to donkeys was wildebeest. And so, like,
I
told you she worked with cool animals.
Yeah, like I loved the wildebeest at Fossil Rim and the baby wildebeest in particular. Like I'd see them and I would just scream. Like I would just, people would be like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, baby wildebeest!" Like I lost my mind. And then baby wildebeest, you don't get to see that often. And I started seeing baby wildebeest look in donkeys. And then I think it just turned into that. And then I've gotten to know donkeys like way more since then. And I'm like, they're amazing and I love them. But I think the gateway was wildebeest.
That's
figure
funny.
that out.
I knew that wildebeests were a gateway drug.
Yeah.
But interesting. Very cool. And then there's one other thing that we need to talk about before we wrap stuff up here, and it is sitting in front of you.
Yes.
So tell me about this.
So I did a children's book with I was the illustrator, and the author was actually Erin Sherrill, who used to work here at the Science Center. So we'd actually started this project at the same time. So the Science Center offers a staff grant to do conservation projects of your choice, and you can apply and pitch what you want to do. And so with my art background, like I'm a watercolor artist and I tend to be more illustrative style. That was kind of always in the back of my head where I was like, I feel like, my paintings would be good for a children's book. And Erin, her interest was always writing. And she had always wanted to try writing a children's book. And so we were like, could we do that for a conservation project? And with AZA, they have their SAFE programs or the Saving Animals from Extinction. And we're like, well, maybe we could do a children's book for one of the SAFE programs. And at the time, we wanted to do something ideally for, one of the species that we had here at the Science Center. And there really just wasn't one that like the idea would work with. But the Andean Bear SAFE was just getting off the ground. It was one of the newer programs. We don't have Andean bear here, but what we do have is a lot of South American species that could be represented in kind of the story that we were starting to develop. And so that's why we actually chose, let's do a children's book about an Andean bear. And then, it's a basic concept of a travel journal story where, and as she travels around South America, she meets other friends. And so we do have like maned wolves in there and anteater. And we had an anaconda at the time. So we had anaconda in there. We have golden lion tamarin in there. So we got to still highlight some of the Science Center species, but then still support, this great conservation program. So that project took much longer. Neither Erin or I had any concept of truly how long it would take. So we actually started it 3 years ago, and the book finally just dropped on Amazon. But we are going to do a whole media push to really help get this out because we do want to. So I must say, so we did it too. So all the proceeds from the book are going to go directly to the Andean Bear Safe program to support all of their conservation initiatives with their plan. And then the book sales are going to connect to like their program partners. We hope to get some hard copies out to sell and to promo. We're working on a website to help develop that, and we're going to push it out everywhere. And so, it was just really exciting to finally see the finished product and be able to, to do, kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like I'd always had that, I wanted to be part of conservation still and just never. So this was like, a direct thing, and bringing it all back to science or art. Well, I got to do both. So how amazing is that?
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, no, that's very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, I've thought for a while that a children's book or even series about miso would pop off. I do write some stuff. I'm just saying, just floating that into the world because I think miso is adorable and very popular. And I'm just floating. I'm just saying words.
I don't disagree. I don't know if I personally have 3 more years of paintings in me, but no, absolutely.
No, that's very cool though.
It will be an adorable story.
I am excited to check this book out. That's so cool. And I love that, it's going to such a great thing. Yeah. And now normally at this time is when I ask for a conservation organization, but I'm guessing that you just plugged it, Andean Bear.
Yes, how can I not plug, Andean Bear Safe in the work that they're doing? I've always just had personally a strong love for South America. I've gotten to travel to South America multiple times. And for some reason, I feel like most people in the zoo field are Africa.
Mhm.
I've always been South America.
That's awesome.
So those have always just been where my passions have lied. And so, and they're doing great work. And what's great too about all the SAFE programs is there might be a signature species, but the work they're doing with, habitat work and restoration and media and, and just education and, all of the different pieces that go into these programs, they help so many species.
Right.
And so, so I think, it's a great program to support and be a part of.
Love that. Very cool. And now it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Oh, well, I heard that you'll take any gross story.
Mm-hmm.
I got a gross story.
Hit me.
Okay, so this is back at my fossil rim days, and I oversaw the children's zoo, and this was back. I mean, like budgets were small, and I wanted to do really cool just biofact displays for the children's zoo. So biofacts would be skulls. I had this idea of like it would be really cool to put all the different skulls up on the wall in the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, so as animals passed, and they would bury them on site, and then they would decompose, and I was able to collect those skulls. And I had almost everything that I had wanted to feature. I was missing a wildebeest. There was a day when a wildebeest passed, and they had, and the staff at Fossil Rim had let me know, they're like, oh, there's a wildebeest. And I was like, oh, great, save her for me. Well, she had ended up getting put into the burial space, and they usually do where they would bury multiple animals before they would cover it up. And so it was like, oh, okay, no big deal. I'll go in there and get her head, the next day. Well, that night before, it stormed like nobody's business. And when it rains in Texas, it rains and it unleashes. And so I went to scope out the situation the next morning, and I see her there, and there's probably about 2 feet of what's now really gross water in this because it's mixed with everything, and she's maybe about, this is a pretty deep hole. So it maybe was about 6-7 feet down, and I was like, I can still get her. So I had an intern at the time, and I was like, intern, I have a plan. And so I was like, I'm going to have you just tie me off with a rope, and then you hold the rope, and I'm going to rappel in, and I'm just going to, without getting in the gross water, I'm going to just grab, by her horns, and then I was using a bone saw so that I could cut the head off, so that I could then put it into a cage to get cleaned up and decompose and get the skull months later.
As one does.
Right. So this is my plan. So the plan worked initially, and I was there, and I was cutting, and everything was good. And not for the intern's fault, because I put them in a hard position, but dropped the rope, or the rope slipped out of their hands. So I fell into the pit of sludge and grossness. And I fell in, and I immediately started vomiting and was like, this is gross.
Fair.
The intern started vomiting because they were grossed out by my vomiting. And so I'm now in this sludge pit of vomit. But at that point, I'm in it, and I can stand. And I was like, well, might as well finish it. So I finished out the rest of removing the head, and I did get it, and then I did successfully get that skull cleaned. And what was cool, so I had done it all to put up on the barn wall. When I did leave Fossil Rim, they did give me that skull as one of my going away presents. So she is on my wall at my house today.
That is one of the grossest, if not the grossest. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But I was very dedicated on getting some good biofacts. So
you were
there
indeed.
We are.
Nice. Awesome. Wow, Jessica. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I'm going to go throw up now.
That was disgusting.
I told you. I was like, how gross.
All right, so there you have it. Yet again, I want to say thank you to Becca and to Jessica and to everyone at the Greensboro Science Center for being such an amazing partner with Rossifari. I'd also like to remind y'all that you can go to Amazon and search for Is There a Bear Over There? And get this incredible children's book that is supporting Safe Andean Bear. I will link that in the show notes. I want to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. And also to remind y'all that we'll be back here on Friday with Zoo News. But until then, remember, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.